I'm Denise Scaloni. Welcome to today's episode of Empowering You. My guest today is James Proton. He's a marketer, a blogger, a podcast host, and now a new author. He's going to share his journey, how it all began. I can't wait for you to meet him and hear his story. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
It's gonna be better. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be better, yeah. It's gonna be great. I can't wait. It's gonna be great.
James, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I was really excited when you sent me that note and asked me to come on. I was excited. I love you and I love what you're doing.
Oh, I
with
love
your
you
show
too.
and everything. It's great.
And we've tried to do this a while ago.
Yeah, we did.
It just didn't
Yes.
work out, but now
Yes, we did.
Now's a
When
perfect
you were on
time.
the podcast, you were on our podcast, and then we
Yes.
were going to do the show, but we just couldn't get schedules together.
Right. And there's so much we can talk about here. There's
yeah.
a lot to unpack with you, James.
Oh, there is.
There's a lot.
There is.
So we've got a podcast we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You have a new book coming out.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow it
Tomorrow's the
launches
launch?
officially. It's actually up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but the official launch is tomorrow. So.
You have a marketing group. You've got all kinds of things going on.
Well, it's been fun because all of this started after I turned 60. To be honest, I spent 40 years in the engineering industry. I'm not an engineer, but I did project management, construction, and then later as I got older, and the company realized what a good BSer I was. They said go out and bring in some clients and some
Right.
projects. So I did that for the last 20 years. But when you get to a point in any career that you don't get excited about the chase, so to speak, right? And there's no dragons left to slay. It's time to look for something else. And so I turned 60 and just kind of thought, there's other stuff that I really like to do that I'd like to, to try. And I had been writing a blog for years. I've written that blog for about 12 years.
Right.
And just throw it out on Facebook so it's accessible for people, and it picked up a little bit of a following. So, and then people started saying, why don't you do a podcast? And
So the podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
it's just, it's a very creative name. It took us a long time to
Come
think
up with
of it.
this name, right?
James Proton Podcast. And really, we didn't know if we were going to do it. So what I did when we started, we figured, well, we'll do that now so we could take advantage of my network, my professional network. And then as we go and fill it out, we would change it. And we still talk about doing that. I would like to do that because I would like to see, the podcast continue after I'm gone with, Nick still doing it, Nick Altland, our
Right.
videographer, with maybe a different host, because, keeping the message and getting all of that out there.
Right.
But we haven't come up with a name yet, so it's still the James Proton Podcast.
So you started the podcast. Was it 2022?
Yeah, it was actually 2 years this month.
Oh, wow. Time goes by so
MJ
fast.
Calloway, who MJ
I know
Calloway
it,
was
MJ,
our
yes.
first guest. So you and people that, and what I thought I would do is I just say, there are people that I know that I'm intrigued by, interested in, that I know would be a great conversation. So I reached out to folks like you and figured, and it started to get some legs, and we've done. Today we actually posted our 102nd show.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, we didn't think that it would, it's a very funny thing, and I'm almost ashamed to admit this, but the first podcast I ever watched or listened to was the first one we did with MJ. I'd never seen a podcast before that. I didn't even know what it was.
Right.
It just wasn't, I would listen to the radio going to and from work,
Right.
so it's been interesting.
And you do it weekly?
We do it weekly, yes. We every Tuesday morning. It publishes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the platforms. Nick's got us out there pretty much. I'm a visual guy. I really only pay attention to the YouTube one.
Right.
That's
how I watch it too.
I can't drive and listen to people talk.
And I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
I need to see it on YouTube or watch it.
Right. And I think a lot of people are like that, and it does pretty well. We've got a lot of, where it surprises me, where I get a lot of impressions and attention is on LinkedIn. And that surprised me because it's not necessarily a business podcast.
Right.
We talk, a lot of the people are entrepreneurs.
You have certain messages.
Right. And but it's been very well received on LinkedIn. And it does well on all the platforms, but Nick tracks all that. But on YouTube, I'm happy with it. We didn't set out to do anything other than just, shine a light on people who are doing really cool things. You know, and that's how it started, Denise. Is, you know, I would see on television, you know, news or even online on social media, somebody who's a kind of a celebrity getting praised for doing something, and I would say, you know, I know a guy in Bell Vernon that does the same thing.
Right.
We need to. Well, nobody's telling his story.
Right.
You know, so that's really how it started, and we've been blessed. We've met some really great people and been able to talk and had some great conversations and some really meaningful conversations.
And over 100, that's quite an accomplishment.
It snuck up on me.
And Nick's still with you after all that.
Yeah, Nick's the driving force. And you know, one of the things that I'm proud of, probably the thing I'm most proud of in the podcast now, you know, is the production quality, and that's all Nick. I mean, he is he's got a cinematic eye. I tell him that all the time. Nick needs to be making movies.
Okay.
You know, he's got that kind
He's
of,
got that,
you know,
yeah.
that cinematic type
You and I don't have
vision.
that.
No.
We're in front of
no.
the cameras.
Not even close.
No,
Not even close. Video is a stretch for me, but
Right.
but he's very creative, and he's also got the technical piece. He edits everything, puts all of that together. And I think from a production quality standpoint, our show's as good as any in this market.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm very proud of. So Nick is really the driver behind it. You know, I sit in the chair and
We have the
talk
easy
to
part.
people.
We just talk.
that's
It's like
exactly-
this. I just sit here and talk.
I show up and talk to people.
All the
These
magic
guys,
happens behind the
that's-
doors.
That's exactly right. There's a Nick here too.
There
My
is a
dad,
Nick here
yeah.
too, right.
So
And I like that you support local businesses when you do it.
we do. Yeah, we do. We try to
That's
give
really important,
back
too.
to the community as much as we can. So if we bring somebody on, you know, in your case, we wanted you promoted your business and your book and everything, and you know, we want the focus is the message. It's the story, okay, the individual
Right.
story, but we also want to try to boost the small business owner, the entrepreneur, you know, and nonprofits.
And we
you
met in
know.
a coffee shop.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We
So
decided.
you're supporting that business as well.
Right, and listen, they've been so good to us. We pretty much have been at his place, Coffee Community more in Menneson, and Chico Bocello in Canonsburg. We've also done Chico Bocello in Washington.
Right.
And they are now, it's like people go in there expecting to see us. And they'll ask Lisa Aprea, the owner in Canonsburg, you know, where's the guys at? Where are they? You know, when we're not there. So we like that vibe because we really wanted it to be kind of like what you do, right? Your show is very conversational.
It is,
You know,
right.
this
That's
is
how I
no
wanted it.
different than if you and I were sitting at your kitchen table.
Right,
Except
right.
Vince would be annoying us.
He would
They'd
be,
So,
yeah.
but shout out to my man Vince. That's my guy. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the vibe we were looking for. And in the beginning, it drove Nick crazy because he was trying to make it during the editing process perfect and get all of the background noise out. But I said, you know, that's why we do it. You know,
Right.
if we wanted it perfect, we'd go in a studio.
Right.
You know, so we've been successful doing that. We're going to try to get a little more into the studio space, simply because for logistically, you know this, scheduling your schedule with the studio, with guests and their schedule
Right.
and all the things, it's a
It's
lot
hard.
of moving parts.
It is.
So I think we're going to try to occasionally go in and just pick a day and just do a month's worth of shows. Just do 4 shows,
Right.
boom, just one after another, and be done. But we'll never get away from the coffee shop piece. We really enjoy that.
So the blog you have on Facebook, I see it on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
So the blog started, you said, a number of years ago.
The blog started.
And I know the story about why you started running a blog. So go ahead and tell that story.
It's an interesting story. There's a fella, a unique character that I started out as my boss. He hired me at Chester Engineers and became a colleague, and he's still a friend. He's 80 now, but 25 years ago, I met him, and at the time I met him, I was going through a divorce, and it wasn't a pleasant divorce. And I don't know that there are any that are, but mine was not.
There was a lot going on.
It was a lot going on. I had just turned 40. I was starting, and all this stuff was going on, and I was going through a very bad time. But he saw something, and he hired me, gave me a job, took a chance, because I wasn't. There weren't a lot of people, especially because engineering is very technical. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of responsibility,
Right.
And I had not demonstrated any level of accountability or responsibility. And so, but whatever it is, and to this day he still can't tell me what it was. He just had a gut feeling. So he took a shot and he hired me. So we went to lunch one day, and he gave me this gift. It was a leather-bound journal, and he said that he wanted me to start to keep a journal and start to get out of my own head by getting into my heart. Okay, so he said, here's what you do. You take this journal, put it on your nightstand with a pen, and then when you wake up in the morning, before you get out of bed, before you do anything else, pick that journal up and write your first thought down. Whether it's a word, a sentence, a paragraph, or 10 pages, doesn't matter. He said, because that is the purest thought you'll have all day. Because that's, your heart's been holding that thought for you all night while you were sleeping.
And that was when? How many years ago?
That was like almost 15 years ago now.
And you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Yeah, I still do it every day, and that's where it started. So then what I was supposed to do is close it, put it down, go about my day. Then when I go home before you go to bed at night, open it and see if what I did that day and how I conducted myself was in alignment with that first thought. So I did that for a good while, and then probably about a couple of years I did that, and before I started writing the blog. And then one day I decided to cheat a little bit. So I did my routine. I did my workout, yoga, the things that I do, and I went back and I opened it up and I took it and I expanded on it and I just threw it out on Facebook, and people responded. So I did it the next day and the next day, and I haven't missed a day for 12 years. I mean, it's 365 days a year. I get up and do it every morning, and it's therapeutic for me.
Sure.
And honestly, I don't want it to sound selfish, but I do it more for me than anybody else, because it really sets the tone for me. You know, it's what I don't want to carry that all day.
Right.
You know, so I put it out there, and if somebody else gets something out of it, if they're inspired by it or motivated, then that's a bonus. It's all the better.
Right.
You know?
And it's therapeutic for you, but a lot of people read that and it resonates with them.
Sure. Yeah. You know, especially
Is your message what?
live, love, learn, pray, and inspire.
That's it.
Yeah,
I wanted to let you know. I knew I wouldn't be able to get them
Yeah.
all. That's right.
And you should ask Vince if he remembers that, because my dad told that to all of us. That was something he always used to preach, and he always said that if you try to do those 5 things every day, you don't have to do them, but if you try,
right.
you're going to end up having a pretty good day. You know.
So the journaling led to the blog, which led to the podcast.
Which led to the podcast. And somebody said, Diane Altland, who's Nick's mother, who's a colleague of mine, I met her in the engineering business. We were at lunch with a client, and somebody said that. Somebody came over to the table and said, I love your blog. You ought to do
You ought to write a
podcast."
book.
And I said, well, yeah, and that led to the book. So it's all really kind of connected. So the book is really about Corey Walmsley. She did the editing, and she's publishing it for me. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. And
Great friend of mine.
you introduced us at your book launch.
Yes.
And so that's when we actually started. So it wasn't like this happened like
It
yesterday.
doesn't happen overnight.
No, it was a
and
much.
that was in August 2022. I had my book launch when you met
right.
Corey.
So it's been a good 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, we were ready to go last summer. And then I had kind of like, I guess, first-time author jitters, because I'm like, oh my God, this thing stinks. It's nobody's.
It's not going to. No one's going to read it.
Nobody's going to read it. I don't think my mom's going to read it. It's just terrible.
Right.
And I called her and I said, can you let me take a breath and digest this? And she suggested, through talking, that read it not like an author, but just
read it.
like a reader.
Right.
And I did that twice. And I thought, it really is as good as I'm going to do. And Corey did a great job, because I dumped a Word document on her that was just, I can't even tell you what it was.
I can imagine.
It was just, and first thing she had to do was, it was so big, she had to cut it in half. And once she got to there, we hit the ground running, and she was great through the whole process, very patient with me. You know me, I'm not always easy.
I'm the same way. Like, go, let's get it done.
Yeah,
get it done.
yeah.
Right.
So it was a learning process. The next one will be better, and I'm not basing the next one on the success of this one. I guess there's another one in here, and Corey and I are going to get it out, so we're going to do that. But it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. We didn't do it to get rich. Very, very rare that authors do.
Right.
But we we're going to take proceeds, and we're going to break even and cover expenses.
Sure.
But we're going to take the proceeds, and we're going to support local nonprofits
Awesome.
from around the Pittsburgh, southwestern Pennsylvania area.
Right.
And it's just a way of giving back. And I mean, I've been blessed. I took a path that, you could honestly say that I shouldn't even be here, but I am. And for whatever reason, I took a right turn and hit the path that God chose for me, where I
Right.
was supposed to be.
Right.
And we made it. So that's kind of what the book's about.
And that's why I do the show,
Mm-hmm.
Empowering You. Because if you were to look back at yourself
Right.
30 years ago, would you think you'd be sitting here talking about a book that you wrote?
Not in a million years.
No.
Not in
You're
a
in a
million
completely
years.
different place.
Yeah.
You thought that would never happen.
Yeah. You know, when I went through that divorce, Denise, and you know, I had a beautiful family. It was completely and totally my fault. It was self-inflicted. And I say that I had a really bad marriage to a really good woman. You know, my ex was a remarkable human being, gave me 3 amazing kids, and you know, they have families, they have children of their own, you know, so everybody's healthy and happy, and it's a wonderful thing. But it was we met when we were 16 and 15, and it just kind of, we got married and it just kind of blew up.
Sure.
So it wasn't like, you know, we were just kids. We gave it a shot. We were married over 20 years.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't something that I could sustain. You know, and it was all on me. It was
People
totally on me.
change. People
Yeah, and I didn't change in a way that was productive to a marriage. So it's just, yeah, something. But you gotta deal with it, and you
Move
know, if you-
on and work on it. And
yeah,
work on yourself.
yeah. And I tried to hide from it, which put me into a really dark place, and I ultimately got diagnosed with depression. You know, which is very manageable if you accept it and acknowledge it and do what you have to do.
Right,
You know,
right.
but if you try to deny it, you try to hide from it, it only gets worse. So I would say my message of the day would be, if you're feeling anything like that, you know, raise your hand and get some help. Call somebody.
Call somebody.
Because
Right.
there are people out there that will help, and you know, it's just call a friend. You know, call a friend and just talk to somebody.
Right. Or if you see someone going through a rough time, just call and say
Absolutely.
hello. Drop a little card in the mail,
Absolutely.
thinking of you.
Absolutely.
That makes a difference.
Yep.
So the book launches tomorrow,
The book launches tomorrow on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
and the title of the book,
The title of the book is "The Person in the Chair: Becoming Your Authentic Self." So, and that's really what it is. Well, I'll tell you a story about the chair, the reference to the chair. So, my father told me a story about when I was a little kid. He said because I used to spend a lot of time at my grandparents, and my grandmother had one of those late 50s, early 60s kitchens with the vinyl chairs, you know, so, and I put a hole in one of those chairs.
oh,
I was just a kid. So anyway,
did you deny it? That was
of
you?
course.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
There was
right.
nobody else in the room but
Right.
me.
Wasn't
but
me,
it
wasn't
wasn't
me, right.
So he said, you know, that's a very important chair, because the day you're born, God gives you an empty chair. Okay? Everybody gets one. Everybody's looks different, you know, and it changes. And throughout your life, different people will sit in that chair, mentoring, right? Teaching and mentoring. Usually your first occupant of the chair is a parent, mom or dad or both, and then it changes and as you go. And years later, I was a kid. I didn't. But years later, I ran into a guy in a coffee shop, an old fella, and he told me the same story.
Wow.
The same story. Didn't know my father, never met him. It was a
Right,
different
right.
city. It was in a different city, different state. And I thought about that, and I thought, oh my goodness.
Okay.
I've heard this
I have to
before.
listen to this now.
Yeah, so that kind of got me listening and thinking back about, and that's when I started to realize live, love, learn, pray, and inspire. It was always there, and it was always floating around in here, but I didn't really put it together
Right.
until after that. So, but yeah, it's all about that journey. I talk about, you know, where I've been and the depression and all those things.
So it's
and
personal.
It's very personal, yeah. But I think
That's hard too. It's hard putting yourself out there.
It is, and you know, you have to be very careful, you know, because there are other people involved. You know, that mess wasn't just my mess. That divorce, you know, I had my wife and 3 children, you
Right.
know, all went through that and lived it and have different
Yeah.
perspectives on that, right?
Sure.
So I'm very clear in the book that this is my perspective. I take ownership of the whole thing. We never point fingers. I don't do that. But it was painful to relive it a little bit. You know, it really was. I mean, even though it's over 20 years old,
Right.
it's mature. But at the end of the day, I had to face a lot of demons, you know, that I'd been hiding from for a long time.
I can't wait to read it.
So, well, I'll be very, very anxious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I
because,
can't wait to read
you know, you are a tremendous writer and a tremendous communicator. So I'll be very anxious to hear what you think.
But you said something that just struck me is you thought the book wasn't good.
I did, yeah.
And I
did.
said the same thing when I wrote my book. I suffered from analysis paralysis.
Yes. I've heard you say that before.
I have-
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Let me change this word. Let me change it.
Uh-huh.
And you could tweak that for the next 5 years.
Right.
And eventually you have to say, okay, let's just put this aside and
Yeah. Corey told me the same thing.
right,
He said, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You have to put the pen down and just stop.
right,
Or
right.
computer, whatever,
Right.
as the case may be. But yeah, and I would say to anybody that is, and you know this, if you're thinking about, I believe that everybody has a book inside them.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody does.
Everybody has a story.
If you've lived this life for 40, 50, 60 years or more,
Right.
you have a story to tell.
Sure.
And there's a book in there. Get it out, write the book, but get somebody to guide you.
Yeah.
Get
And I
somebody
believe
to
every
guide
lesson's a blessing.
you. Absolutely.
And putting it out there, having someone else read it can help
Yeah.
somebody else. Like
Right.
someone listening to this show right now or watching this show and hear your story and think, wow, look how far he's come.
Yeah, and I got. I don't want to get dramatic, but I got to the point where I saw my last day.
Wow.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I gave up.
Yeah.
And Olivia Behana, the show that we just published today, you need to watch this because
I'm
you need
definitely-
to meet Olivia. Olivia she's. I say Olivia is my angel. Okay, because when and I'll make this quick. When Olivia was 4 years old, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
And
4 years old.
4 years old, and she had it, difficult as childhood as you can imagine. So our oldest granddaughter Emma was in dance recital, and Olivia was in it too. This was about 10 years ago, so she was probably about 13 years old. She was in remission. She was healthy, and she did her a solo at this recital. Now I didn't want to go to this recital, and Terry Lynn, my lovely significant other, said, you got to go. Emma really, it would mean a lot for her to be there, and blah, blah, blah. Because I was in a really, really bad place. I was struggling. And I knew. I gave up. I gave up. And there wasn't much time left. I wasn't but I went, and I didn't know this was going to happen. I knew Olivia's parents, but I really didn't know her. She was just a child. And so it started out, and she spoke, and she had written something. She talked about her story and her journey, and then she did a solo that she had choreographed to Martina McBride. I'll love you through it, or okay. And I cried like a baby. And Terry Lynn was kind of laughing at me, and I said, we got to go see Pam. I need to talk to her. But I didn't want to just go up and talk to her because she didn't know who I was.
Right.
And, so her mother Pam, I went and found her, and I'd really like to talk to her. And I'll tell you to this day that I kept going. I didn't give up because of her.
Wow.
So I asked her to write the foreword for the book.
Nice.
And she did, and she just crushed it. And I told her the other day when we did the podcast, I said, the foreword was probably better than the book. And she's just a gentle soul, and it just amazed me. But I could literally say, without being overly dramatic, that Olivia probably saved my life.
I have one final question
Go
for
ahead.
you, James. Blogging, podcast, author now. What is next for James Proten?
Well, we're making a film. Believe it or not, we're I don't know if I guess
You just keep going bigger and bigger and bigger.
And it's Nick. Nick's 21. He's young, and he's got all these big ideas and
Energy.
this
He's got
vision.
energy.
And I don't think he realizes that I'm old enough to be his grandpa, for Pete's sake. But he's got, I love him to death. But we met in Pittsburgh nonprofit, Hakima Place, and we had them on a podcast, and we really connected with them. And to do something to give back, I thought maybe we'd do a little marketing video. And I said, and Nick just brought it out, let's do a documentary. Okay. Well, I said okay, because I don't know what it takes to make a documentary. I mean, what do I know?
What do I? Right.
So next thing I know, we're writing scripts. Nick and the guys are going to Kenya. They spent almost 3 weeks in January in Kenya filming on site. We filmed here in Pittsburgh, this part of it, and so he's right now in post-production. And
I can't wait to see it.
I asked him what my role is, and I'm the producer.
Okay.
I don't know what the producer does. But I used to see those,
Maybe
at
nothing,
the movies. You see
but
those.
yeah,
they
right,
don't, because I don't do
right,
it.
right.
I just try to find ways to pay for all the stuff. That
Right,
he's doing,
right.
But that's next. That's what we're working
Can't
on
wait
right
to
now.
see it.
And I still dabble in, in stuff and the marketing stuff and that. But this creative stuff is really fun. It's really fun. I probably wouldn't have appreciated it 20 years ago or 30 years
Right.
ago.
You weren't right that place.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm so glad this worked out. You were able to come in.
Well, thank you. I love it. And thank you for letting me actually talk because, you know, the last guy sat behind that desk.
We love him then.
I would be remiss if I didn't say hello to him. The talking
Yeah.
machine, Alan Levine.
Yeah, we love
But
Alan.
what you're doing with Empowering You is so important. And the way you connect to people, my dear friend, is it inspires me because
Aw, thank you.
you're so welcoming and you do empower people. And not just women, men as well. You're the real deal.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's my honor to be here.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be
Thank you for watching today's episode of Empowering You. I'd like to thank my guest, James Proten. He shared his journey, where he's been, where he is now, and where he's going. I hope his story empowers and inspires you to live your best life possible. Thank you for watching and see you next time.